Right, so good evening to everyone, and especially good evening to Simon.
Good
And
evening.
it's great to have you along, and I think everyone's going to be very interested with your talk. Like I said, we have got quite a few people who went to the satellites. Right, I'll pass it over to you, Simon. And
Excellent.
good evening
Well,
to you.
thank you very
Yeah, we,
much.
we can just about see you, so you're okay.
Yeah, unfortunately the lighting's a bit poor up here in Yorkshire. We're on a different time zone, I think, over the Pennines there. It's casting a great shadow. But good evening, everybody, and thank you very much indeed to the Stockport Amateur Radio Society for inviting me to do a bit of a talk on satellite operation. And yeah, well, I'm going to wing it. I won't lie because I'm used to that kind of stuff. I do teach during the day, so I tend to waffle along quite nicely. So if I do get a bit boring, just give me the nod and I'll change. But right now, I'm going to tell you a little bit how I started off with the satellite stuff. So I've been working the birds probably for about 20 years. And I first started off actually receiving weather satellites. That's where I first got the passion for satellite tracking and working the birds, as it were. And that was the easy way to get into it for me. So I started by making some homemade yagis. I had a broomstick yagi, which was consisted of a wooden pole with a couple of steel elements, which I just cut from metal strip. That worked pretty good. So those satellites came through on 137 megahertz on FM, and they are on wide band, and I still receive them today. So not all of them are still active, but we've got NOAA 18, NOAA 15, and NOAA 19 still working. So if you're interested in starting to receive signals from space, I suggest the NOAA satellites is a good starting point. You're going to get a constant transmission. It's a noise, not the most pleasant sound, not unsimilar to a fax or SSTV, but it's a great way to start off pointing your antennas to the sky and just getting used to getting the correct angles and elevation angles and stuff, because that can be quite deceiving. So I started off by doing that, and I ended up building a few homemade antennas using bits of wood and aluminium bar. One of them was the IO antenna, if you remember that one, which consisted of 2 loops. So that was a full wave loop for 145 megahertz and a full wave loop for 435, we'll say. And it had a little reflector on the back of each of the loops. It went on a single little wooden boom. I also made one out of an old plastic garden spade, which was a pretty cool boom. It was nice and light, anything like that. And that was pretty successful for working the early days of the FM satellites. So those kind of satellites were Alpha Oscar 91, if anybody can remember that one. And amazingly, SO50, which is still active today. So that's been going for over 20 years, that one. So that's how I got into it. Started off with a few homemade antennas, the IO, the broomstick yagi, and then once I got a few more spare cash, we'll say, I bought a 10 element diamond, and I strapped that to the top of, that was a 433 antenna, and I strapped that to the top of the 145 IO, and I named that the IO 10, because it had 10 elements for 435 and the IO loop underneath it. And that was brilliant. So I used that one for SSB satellites. So the SSB satellites, that's where my interest started to really kind of grow. And back then it was a satellite called VO52, and that had a really big footprint. It was a very strong satellite. It had a really good output, and it was particularly reliable. It was an Indian satellite, and I used to work a lot of Europeans via it. It didn't actually get you across the Atlantic, but it did pretty good across Europe. So that was how I started with the SSB satellites. There was AO7 about, and that's still around, and there was a couple of others, I think FO29, and that's on and off a little bit now, but that was the main one. And then, of course, quite a few new ones have come along since then. We've had a lot of FM satellites, and what I've noticed is they don't really have such a long lifespan. So you kind of got to get on them, work them, and obviously try to get them in the log as quick as you can. That is actually one of the thrills of the hobby. You get to find all these new satellites. That is part of the excitement, and everybody wants to work you on the different satellites. So that's a little bit like your Porter or your SOTA or any kind of contest activation. You want to collect all these different satellites, a bit like you want to work all the different bands and work all the DX. It's the same kind of thing, and it's really exciting, obviously. So that's what it's all about. That's the basics. I've been doing it for 20 years. I love it. I was lucky enough to do it at work. We set up a satellite station, and it was part of a STEM project. We call it the Star Center. And I used to do the weather satellite tracking and the tracking of the space station. I actually got to meet a few famous people. One of them was Alexander Volkov, and he was a cosmonaut. He came to visit us at the Star Center, and we got to play satellites and radio afternoon. There's his QSL card, which I cherish. That's probably my best QSL card. So I got it hand given. And since then, I've worked quite a lot of other astronauts and cosmonauts via the ISS, which is obviously fairly easy, but it's more about getting the timing and the luck when they're actually active. So that's a little bit about what I've been doing over the last 20 years, from weather satellites to SSB satellites, which is where I spent a lot of my time, because I find they are really easy compared to the FM satellites. You've got much more bandwidth, so you can obviously have one or two QSOs can take place simultaneously without treading on each other's toes, so that makes it easier. And the actual signal is much easier to receive in comparison to an FM signal. It travels a lot further. With the homemade antennas, I was looking at a distance of probably 1,500 miles getting into an SSB satellite, which is quite decent. And we're talking no more than 20 watts of output. So going to the equipment, I'm still using the same radio. I've had it since 2004. It's the FT847, and it's specifically designed for satellites. It's obviously a very old radio, and there's a lot of finer replacements, such as the ICOM and some of the SDR stuff. However, I still use the old FT470 FM, probably 1980s handheld. That is superb for working FM birds. It's wide banded, and when I say wide band, I mean wide band receive. So a lot of my equipment's very old. I don't really think that the modern stuff has any advantage whatsoever. And the beauty of it is, obviously, these old little handhelds. I've got a little Yaesu one here. If you use it with a little rubber ducky antenna it comes with, you think it's not very effective, you plug it into your Arrow antenna or a homemade IO or Yagi, a couple of Yagis, and you can point it to the sky and you can be working 1,000 miles away into a satellite. And obviously, the person could be another 1,000 miles away. So it's amazing what you can do on 4 watts. So for me, I love it, radio full stop. I'm into HF and everything. I've got a substantial station now, fortunately, but I've always built it up slowly. But for me, the satellite buzz, the fact that you can operate with a simple £4 AliExpress special and get yourself into the space station with an Arrow antenna, which obviously they're a few pounds, but they're well worth the money. I've got one here, I'm looking at it, by the way. Unfortunately, the camera setup's not allowing me to show you it too well. I'm just using my little webcam. But the Arrow antenna is something that you plug any of these devices in and it brings a brand new world into play. So they're amazing VHF, UHF antennas, and as are the homemade IO and the Yagis. Hopefully that's created a little bit of thought. Anybody got any questions so far?
While you're there, Simon, this IO,
yeah,
I've seen that on your one of your YouTube videos. Am I right in that?
That's right, yeah. Well, if you look at some of my old stuff, I've actually got a satellite playlist on my YouTube channel dedicated to pure satellite stuff. And if you go back in time, you will see there's quite a few IO videos, probably starting from around 2007. You'll see that kind of time, 2006 possibly. Right back at the beginning, that's when I started using it, maybe 2008, I'm not too sure. But looking around them times, you will see a lot of stuff on that one. And if you want to find about construction plans, I've got a website with some links which have a detailed diagram with all the dimensions to construct the IO. You can easily make it out of a bit of simple wire and cable ties, or you can use it. I've used 12mm aluminium round bar, which is good because obviously it's stable and holds its shape. And incidentally, that antenna is still going strong now, 20 years on. And I've also made it out of TIG welding wire, joining that together. So they're very easy to construct, and it's just a full wavelength for 145 megahertz and a full wavelength for 435 megahertz, one in front of the other. They're perfect.
Real, that's what I was after. Cheers, Simon.
No problems. There's obviously the Moxon's quite good as well. You can make a little mini Moxon. They're a little bit simpler, and they're quite suitable. I've seen people use a bit of plastic conduit and use, again, a bit of welding wire and make a small Moxon. But let's face it, these the antennas that you see on AliExpress for a couple of quid, you might as well purchase some of those, get the elements, strip them down and modify and make your own. So nothing too technical to get yourself a couple of Yagis, is it, for 145 and 435? That's barely all you need to do. So the actual setup I'm using is the Arrow, as I've mentioned. It's the original one. I got it back in the late, before, probably about 2008, before they sold them over here. And I actually imported this antenna from America. It's the Mark 1, and it came with the duplexer. So a lot of people run them with a duplexer, and they run them using one handheld. That's okay. It's effective. It works. You can get a good signal in, and obviously you receive a good signal back down. But the disadvantage is you're not certain that you're hitting the bird. So when you're using one radio, you are making it, and it's possible to do an effective QSO. But if you disregard the duplexer, which I have done, take it out of line and run two separate coaxial feeds from each antenna straight to two separate radios, then you can receive your own signal as you're transmitting. Now, the advantage of this to me is you can actually detect the field strength by pointing the antenna and transmitting, and you can obviously lock onto the bird much better by using using your ears pretty much. So you kind of develop the sense of getting used to the quality of the signal, just like when you're listening to a mobile station on FM. It's the same kind of thing. So as you move your antenna, you can hear your own voice get cleaner, and obviously the white noise will disappear, and you know you're effectively aiming in the right direction. That's the advantage of having two handhelds and removing the duplexer, because they do come with the duplexer, I believe. So that's what I've done myself. And then I've gone one step further. I've since obviously added it to a camera photography tripod, and I've put a piece of aluminium on the back to maintain lightweight, and built a couple of cradles. So I've actually got 4 different cradles attached to it, so I can put 4 different handheld units on. So the experiments that I've found doing this is that the cheap little Bayfangs and all the other stuff, they receive absolutely fantastic, superb, really clean receive, awesome. But don't bother trying to transmit with them, because the output is so unclean. And I'm not being critical, because I've got loads of them and I like them, but you can't put a decent output signal on the Arrow antenna, because it just interferes with your downlink reception. So it's pointless exercise. So in my opinion, they're great for receiving, but I use a Kenwood or a Yaesu for transmitting on. So that's what I've noticed in my experiments. I've tried all the different cheaper radios for transmissions, and I've noticed that it definitely degrades the quality of reception on the downlink, which is generally on 435 or 436, 437 megahertz. So that's what I've noticed. I've yet to try the SSB side. I've got a Radtel which will receive on SSB, and I'm going to try it with the 817 using the Arrow. So that's the next experiment I'm going to have a look at. But certainly stay away from the cheap end for transmitting if you're going to use 2 radios. Now, if you're just going to use 1 radio, if you're going to keep it on a budget, it's fine, because you're not going to interfere with your transmission. So if you're using the duplexer, a cheap Chinese radio will work perfect, no problems whatsoever. But if you're wanting to listen to your own signal, you need to have a good transmitter, a decent one, to put the uplink up, to keep the signal clean. Going to the reception then, so I've noticed that obviously the signals degrade, especially on the downlink of 70 SEMS. So for myself, keeping the coaxial run short is obviously key. That's where you're losing a lot of the signal strength. So as far as the outdoor installation goes, I've got a fairly long run of coaxial feeder, and I've got some heavy duty low loss stuff up, but obviously you can spend a lot of money on coax, getting it so it's super efficient. I ain't really going to waste that kind of money personally, so I prefer to put the money into a preamplifier. And what I've done is I've bought the mini preamplifier for the 70 SEMS side. So that actually amplifies downlink signals very well, and it kind of allows for any losses which occur in the coaxial feed, the length of coax back to the shack. So by putting the preamp as close as possible to the feed point of the antenna, I've also minimized any possibility of getting any interference. So I've got exactly a ½ meter coaxial patch lead coming out of the back of the 30 element X Yagi for 437 megahertz, and that's plugging into the mini preamplifier. So a very short run of coax into the preamp from the back of the antenna. So that minimizes all chance of getting any noise or any degraded signal through transmission from the other side. So the boom itself, I've made sure that I've got at least 1.5 meters between both antennas on my output antenna outside. And on the other side, it's the 1455 element cross Yagi. And that's not got a preamplifier on it. It's just mainly used for transmission purposes. So I've not preamplified that antenna. And we don't get as much loss on 145 megahertz either with the signals. So that's the setup. So we've got a 1455 element on one side of the boom and a 437 Oscar 30 element on the other side. They're both cross Yagis, and one of them's got the preamp fitted. The rotator is a G5500 from Yaesu, the old one. It's been replaced now from the AC model to the direct current model. I can't say if it's any better or any worse, but I can't really fault the one I've had. And again, it's 20 years old. I've had it in bits half a dozen times, replaced the potentiometer and stuff like that, and unseized the gearbox a few times. But other than that, it's still working well. That is auto control using SAP PC32 software, which is a free download. You can get a license for it, but it operates fine without the license. It has a cat cable plugged in to the back of the G5500 rotator box, and that controls it automatically from the SAP PC32 software. Simultaneously, the radio's plugged into it with another cat cable, and the radio, like I said earlier, is the FT847 from Yaesu. I've got the baud rate set to the highest setting on the menu, which is the cat menu, reading the data from the computer, the speed. So I've got it set to the max, and pretty much that controls the frequency Doppler correction. It also comes in handy when I want to change satellite frequencies, because the SAP PC32 software pre-programs the frequencies to the radio, so you don't have to remember the frequencies. So you just click on the actual satellite and it populates the radio information and drives the radio and the control unit for the antennas. So it's all automated. However, back to the IO days and same radio, I used to use a G250, I think it was, basic Yaesu rotator. Well, I still got it set up at my holiday shack, and I've got the IO, which I mentioned earlier, fixed at 30 degrees elevation. And that actually is pretty successful, as you'll see on some of the older videos. And I've worked many stations, including the space station. But going back to today's days, obviously it's 20 years on, and we've moved into the automated setup, which has taken a lot of time. The one bit I forgot to mention is the COM232 interface. So that's a small unit which is plugged into the computer with a cat cable, and that is actually in between the computer and the Yaesu G5500 rotator controller. So that reads the data from the PC, from the software, and puts it into the control unit. That's just a small cigarette packet size unit, and again, it's a Chinese product, and it cost me 100 quid. It's a pretty good bit of kit. I've had it for 5 years, no problems whatsoever. Very nice, much cheaper than some of the branded stuff. So I think there's probably a link on one of my videos for that. That's pretty good. As far as working the birds, you don't need fancy equipment. You don't need power. Minimum power is required. 20 watts is enough. Sometimes 5 watts. Obviously, when you're a handheld unit, you could be running 2-3 watts, and you're still putting a big signal into it. No problem whatsoever. So don't be fooled by that. If you are wanting to work the bird, keep it short and keep it sweet. Just say your call sign and ideally your locator square. Don't worry about the signal exchange. That's meaningless. Just a gesture. What is important is that you get the locator square out first, because that's the bit that everybody's wanting to get in the log. The call sign and the locator. If you want to say 59, no problem, but that's not necessary. So quick exchange. Try not to talk unnecessarily. Obviously, we all do it. Sometimes the satellite passes are dead, especially on a night, and it's a good time to have a little natter to the regular guys, which is fine. On the SSB birds, you've got much more space. You can literally have a QSO about anything, and you're not going to get on anybody's nerves. The only thing you've got to bear in mind is, as you're talking, downlink frequency is shifting. So keep an eye on the frequency, make adjustments where necessary, possibly move it up a little bit to correct your frequency position on that band so that you don't drift into someone else's QSO. that's a little bit annoying when you're talking and someone comes down and hasn't adjusted their frequency and they start splattering through your frequency. So stuff like that, that's just through experience. And obviously, no one's going to be mad. So if you're thinking about doing it, just get on there and give it a go. What we'd really like to see is more people on SSB satellites. So if you see an old Kenwood or an old Yaesu or anything which has got 2 meters SSB and 70 SEMS SSB, get yourself it picked up. It doesn't matter how old it is. It's good to go on the satellites, and it'd be great to work some of you on the satellites. I'll take a little pause, see if anybody wants to ask me any questions.
Yeah, I'd like to ask you about AO7. It's something that I've been interested in for years. I've never been able to catch it in recent years. Listening for beacons, is there a trick to it?
Yeah, I think your best bet, to be honest, is to have a look on the page amsat.org status, sat status. On there, you'll see all the satellites which are currently active and what their up and downlink frequencies are, which ones they're using. And on that particular satellite, it's got a choice of 2, A and B. So sometimes you're listening to the wrong band and the wrong frequency, the wrong way around, the transponder. The up and down can be inverted or changed around. And quite often, it'll be upper sideband down and lower sideband up. But sometimes it's the other way around. So it could be that you just need to see which one it's operating on, because I've noticed it switches about quite a bit, does that one. So that's probably just a bit of bad luck. It's a very good footprint. I don't use it that much, but I have used it, and it does get out well. But the RS-44 satellite is the favorite to go with. That is the best one, excuse me, and the downlink frequency is 435,650 upper sideband. That's 435,650 upper sideband, and the uplink will be roughly 145,955 lower sideband, around there, shifting up and down 10 kilohertz either side. That's RS-44 from Sputnik. It's SSB transponder. It's a fantastic footprint, and you can hear states. You'll get across to America, no problem. I've worked the other evening. I went up to the Arctic Circle. I've been into Russia. You can get the Middle East. If you're lucky, you'll work some Africa. It's a fantastic satellite. So anyone wanting to receive good signals, you'll even be able to pick signals up from RS-44 using a vertical antenna, but only on the far away low elevation ones. As soon as it gets up in the air, you won't receive much, but it's certainly worth a try. Any more questions?
Thanks so much.
Oh, my pleasure.
Can I ask something?
Yeah, go ahead.
There's a couple of things. Just regarding the duplex, I thought the idea of that was sort of not so much positioning the antenna, but the polarization. Turning it the right way, and rather than actually sort of the elevation or azimuth. Is that how you do it, or?
So when you say duplex, do you mean as in duplex receive 2 signals at once, or duplex from the antenna with a single coaxial feed? Is that which one do you mean?
Yeah, duplex, so you can listen to your own signals coming back.
Okay, yeah, well, it's just the advantage of that kind of reception is just hearing how strong you're getting into the bird, and if you're hitting it. Because when you get to something like the space station, for example, it's so active. Everybody in Europe is itching to get into it. So I would imagine every time it comes over, there's about 50 signals hitting it at once. So it's kind of a battle of the giants, really. And you need a little bit of a decent antenna and a very accurate aim to get into something like that. So that's when having the duplex receive is advantageous, because you can hear yourself. And you might just hear a blip for a second, and you know you've hit it. So then you can readjust your angle, correct it, and then try again and probably make a difference. If you're not hearing yourself, this is when you're hearing a lot of people working SO50 and ISS are putting a really awesome signal in. We all go back to them, but they're not receiving it very well because they're managing to hit it, but not aimed up to get the correct reception. So this is why hearing yourself is advantageous, because then you know you're getting the signal back down properly, if that makes sense.
And you get the capture effect on FM as well, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. You get
let's ask a couple of other quick things. Just I'll take up too much of your time. Just firstly, have you ever used an egg beater antenna? And also with the linear satellites, if you say want to make a sched on those, How do you do it? You just nominate a frequency that's received at the satellite, or is that what you put in the log?
Pretty much, yeah. First of all, the egg beater antenna. Yeah, I've had a look at those. I've never actually constructed one. I've considered it, but I do know a chap that operates with egg beater antennas, and I speak to him on a regular basis via the space station and SO50, and it works very effectively. It's not quite as good as an antenna which can move, but I would say if you're stuck for that kind of rotative thing, it's a very good compromise. So I would recommend, definitely it will work with a good result.
You'd have to put some power through it, presumably, would you?
Yeah, if you've got a bit more power, you've got obviously more chance. But on reception point of view, it'll be very good. So no problem with reception. Yeah, getting out a little bit higher output will give you an advantage. But as long as you don't overdo it, because you can actually desensitize the satellite. The one about, what did you say about the SSB again? Sorry, just remind me of that.
If you organise a SCED with someone, what frequency do you sort of nominate, and what do you put in the log? Because presumably you've got to allow for Doppler.
Well, to be honest, what it is, once you get into it, there's about a 20 kilohertz bandwidth for the SSB birds. So, for example, RS-44 will start coming down at roughly about 435, 650, something like that. And you'll also hear signals right down to 450. So you've got 20 kilohertz. So you could more or less say, I'll see you around 650 on the next pass. And then you'll be down there calling. So no one would be too worried if you were on there calling on SCED. I speak to a friend of mine, G1YEF, on a regular basis, Mark, and we tried SSTV. So we actually transmitted some SSTV pictures via RS-44, and we did that via SCED. So we arranged it over a few nights, and I think we did it on JL97 as well. So we do it on the SSB birds because obviously they've got the wide bandwidth, and you can get away with it. But there's also digital mode on there. People are operating digital modes. I don't do it myself, but people are doing it. So there's other ways of communicating via satellite. So that's another thing to consider if you're into operating digital modes. You can do that as well, and obviously CW. So if you're a CW op, you generally find the CW, just like on any amateur band, it's at the beginning. So if the RS-44 bird has come in and you were hearing voices around 650, 435, 650, you'd probably hear some CW around about 435, 635, about 15 kilohertz down. That's where you'll find the beacon. So it's just like any band. You've got the CW at the beginning, a little bit of data modes after that, and then you've got the voice coming through. So what you've got to do, you've got to make sure that it's somewhere in the middle of the satellite bandwidth as it's moving across. If you're at the outskirts of the bandwidth, especially at the end, then you may start to warble and distort on your signal because the input will be a little bit out. So you've got to try and keep it within that kind of range, operating range in the middle where possible, but obviously allow for anybody else who's in there as well.
Just quickly, just on etiquette with linear satellites, do people expect you to be using cat controlled?
No. I never used to have it before. I only got lazy when they became reasonable price. So I've operated for the last 5 years with it. But previous to that, I used to twiddle the knobs and press the buttons, and I had no problem whatsoever. It's just, if not more satisfying, to be honest. So it's very easy. And it's good fun. So I'm going to be going out in the garden with the 817 and this little handheld, and I'm going to try some SSB just by fiddling around and pointing the antenna, and that'll be great fun. Can't wait. So hopefully I've infused a few of you into getting into it, and obviously I know a few of you already are into it. I've not done CQ100 myself. I've listened to it via the SDR. I've enjoyed listening. I can see the thrill and the excitement, but the thrill for the lower Earth orbit satellites is something else. You've got a short window. Some of them last a bit longer. The RS-44 passes can be 15 minutes, maybe a bit longer sometimes on the right path. And like I said before, you can work across to Canada, North America, Central America easily on low power. But the FM ones, such as SL50, ISS, it's a quick, short, sweet affair, no more than 10 minutes. But the excitement it generates in that 10 minutes is absolutely amazing. So the adrenaline's flowing, and it's the best thing going. And if you get the signal into it, well, then you become a satellite addict, I'm afraid. So don't blame me if it happens. You'll never be the same again. The worst thing about it is, obviously, when you've got the arrow antenna, you are the most weirdest guy in town. Obviously, you've already got an image being a radio amateur, but imagine running in and out of the garden every 5 minutes with that in your hand, and then shouting at the bottom of the garden, pointing it in the sky, and then running back in again, and then going back out again in about 3/4 of an hour and doing it all again. So that's what you're going to look like. Bear that in mind. And I've got friends that are doing it at midnight. I speak to Bill regularly. He knows who it is if he's watching this. G6YTZ. He's out in the garden at midnight, so he must have some very understanding neighbours or a very big garden. I'm not too sure which it is. But yeah, it's excellent fun. Everybody's friendly. The friendships that you can develop on satellite bands is something else. I've made more friends on there through ham radio than any other bands. I mean, there's obviously some fantastic radio operators out there worldwide and lots of friends, but the satellite guys, they are so friendly, and they can send you emails, photographs. You know, they all go on a first name basis. It's a really good set of guys and a great community, and some good female operators as well. So you've got a mixed bunch. So get yourselves on there, enjoy the fun. You're missing out for the sake of a few quid for a couple of handhelds and an arrow antenna. You've got a brand new world to play with, and I'm telling you, you're going to be so amazed how good the handhelds work. You wonder why you've never tried it before. It's so easy to do. Watch some videos. I watched Randy, the American guy, 20 years ago, working AO91, and that worked for me. I saw him do it, and I thought, you know what? Forget the weather satellites, and I went out, and I've not stopped doing it since. So it's fantastic. I've got my arrow antenna set up here, and I'm going to be out playing around, loving every minute of it. So hopefully, I've answered a few questions. If there's any more, I'm happy to answer anything else. Oh, I'll just say one thing. I've got this tablet, and people keep asking me about this software. So I use the SAP PC32 on the PC, on the tablet. I'm not sure if you can see it. I've got this. It's an Android tablet. So I'm using Look for Sat. That's LOOK for Sat. Look for Sat. It's a free download. It's really good. You click on a bird, and you get the map of the actual bird coming up. Hang on a minute. And you can track it, you can touch it, it gives you all the data, and it's really cool. So that's a free app, and everybody's asking me about it. It's called Look for Sat. You can download it on an Android device, your phone or a tablet. Worth getting.
Just with the lower satellites, low Earth orbit satellites, particularly the ISS, I think, which is only what at the moment 400 kilometers up or something like that. I mean, just a suggestion for people sort of very, very new to satellites or pointing antennas and stuff. I mean, if you look at it, we talked about this on Saturday, I think, weren't we? If you say get a pass that's 65 degrees above the horizon at maximum elevation, which is sort of common for our latitudes here, you could point the antenna roughly westward, about 40 degrees up, and just sort of intercept the satellite as it comes across. And you will not have to change the frequency even for 70 SEMS. So for about 40 degrees down to the horizon, you can just point the antenna on a tripod ready to go, and then you won't have to change much in terms of azimuth or elevation. Just follow it down to the horizon. I think with high elevation passes, and if you're fairly new and you sort of haven't really pointed antennas sort of all around the sky before, it can be a bit tricky. And also you're changing frequency at the same time, as well as moving the antenna quickly and all this sort of stuff. I don't really see that sort of advised, and I think that should probably happen, in my opinion. I mean,
I'd also suggest putting 1 kilohertz steps in
with telescopes and stuff.
Yeah, if you put 1 kilohertz, no, it's okay. I'm just agreeing with what you're saying. It's a good idea having your antenna fixed to receive them. But if you put the handheld with 1 kilohertz step programmed memory channels in advance, start off, for example, if you're going to track the ISS, you could have the frequency set to 437.810. That's what it receives. And then have it going down, say, 5 kilohertz at a time. So 437, then 805, then 437.800, 437.95, and so on. So do it like that. quite
kind
easily.
of my point. That's kind of my point. You're spinning a few plates. You're changing the frequency, which you'll have to do at least 3 times on a horizon.
It's not difficult. I mean, it doesn't happen fast because you're listening to the audio. You don't have to change it. Nothing's going to spoil the contact because your uplink remains the same. So your fixed transmission uplink, which would be 145.990,
2 meters.
will
Yeah.
remain the same. So your signal out will not vary. So you're just listening to a deteriorating signal as the signal's drifting down the frequency. So just by giving it 1 click like that, you're going to be good to go for another 1.5 minutes. So then another click. So it's only 3 clicks, 4 clicks in the space of 10 minutes. Not too bad.
Yeah. I think. Yeah. I mean, if you some people really struggle with this. I mean, this comes from my experience with telescopes. Is that some people really they don't have the situational awareness of the sky so much. I think they'd probably be all right with changing the frequencies, like you said.
Yeah.
But certainly for a high pass, and if
Yeah.
you're going to go sort of almost over the top, it just could be a bit disorientating. And if you're nervous and you mic shy a bit as well, you know.
We've come across this before. It's an elevation meter.
A little inclinometer.
You can put that on top of your antenna. You can angle it, and it gives you the elevation. So it's magnetic.
Yeah.
So they're only £10 on Amazon. So for £10, if you're struggling with elevation, get one of these and just stick it on the antenna.
Yeah, an inclinometer or something, isn't it?
It's just for engineering, really. It's for doing a bit of sheet metal work, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But pretty much, it's a great piece of kit, and I agree with what you're saying there. So yeah. That's one way around it to make life easy. But I understand what you're saying about getting the elevation confused, because I've got a telescope as well, and I understand what you're saying. But people do misinterpret the angle, and usually they underestimate it. So I find that people are pointing a lot further down than what it should be. So they need to bring it up, what they think, by probably about another 20 degrees, usually. Usually out like that, and you're bang on right. I totally agree with you.
Can I add one other thing when it comes to operating using the ISS, if that's all right?
Yeah, go ahead.
If you're lucky to be at dusk and dawn when you've got your passes, and you're in a fairly dark sky area, you can see it. That makes life a lot easier.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's nothing better, is there, than seeing it coming over, and we see it quite a lot when it's obviously in range. And, it certainly gleams beautifully as it goes past. So that's one of the thrills of it. And obviously you can just stand outside. Usually if you can see it, you don't need a decent antenna. You can receive it on a little rubber duck, stock antenna on anything. If you can see it, you can hear it, that is for sure.
I took my arrow on holiday with me to Crete, and I worked a couple of Italian stations doing the ISF and so that was fun.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it's so great. The thing about the arrow antenna is the fact that it strips down to a very small footprint to carry. So you can put it in your suitcase, and they're very light. They're really well constructed. I've had this one for 20 years. It's still going strong, faultless, and probably the best bit of money you can spend on anything if you want to work the satellites. You don't need to go any further than an arrow antenna.
Can I add one other thing to that? For those who are not particularly interested in satellites per se, it's a beam. You can use it just for normal contacts.
True enough.
Yep, absolutely.
Little thing about the ISS, just a funny tale. I was driving down to London a while ago with some friends in the car, and there was an expected link up with a school. So I turned my rig on, and they were listening in. So I caught it on just a very small antenna on the car, and they were saying, "This is interesting. Where's this coming from?" The International Space Station. Oh.
Well, it certainly attracts some attention.
It blew the mind away.
Yeah, well, it's brilliant. I mean, to get young people infused, it's a great way to go. And another thing which we've not mentioned is the SSTV side of it. So the 145-800 SSTV slow scan television, that's another passion I have for satellites. And obviously when the ISS, especially the Russian module, they're the guys usually responsible for doing that. They put loads of diplomas out, and every Christmas they're always doing that, and it's a great time. They generally do it 2 or 3 times a year, to be fair. So 145 800 wide band. Don't have it on narrow. Get it on wide. Probably start about 145 80 203, and then it'll drop to maybe 145 97, just down below the 800 mark. So not much Doppler correction on the 2 meter band, but a little bit. And the good thing about the 847 is it's got the frequency discriminator on the meter, so you can fine tune the actual thing by hand if you wish. So good thing to use is MMSS TV software, the old school stuff, straight into the PC. But obviously people can do it on the Android tablets, on the phones. But I'm still old school, so I love that. And yeah, I'll be chasing the SSTV awards this time around. Anybody else done SSTV?
Really?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it's great fun.
The Black Cat do a really nice app for iPhone.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that.
I did that while again they were doing one of the SSTV things while I was in print, so we did that as well. And in fact, one of the reasons we took it all with us is because my partner's nephew just did radio, specifically the satellite stuff, and this has been kind of waiting for him to get more interested into it.
Yeah, it's a great idea. Visual stimulation of a decent set of pictures, and obviously, like I say, my daughter, she's M0YKS, and she likes certificates and awards, so all that kind of stuff. It's great to get the young people interested. So a good way to do it. They should do more SSTV stuff.
I listened to the recent school one that they did from Ireland. That was really good, and I was using a X500 vertical antenna because it was the pass was so low in the air.
Yeah.
I managed to listen to about 8 minutes of the pass.
Was that when there was a female astronaut? Was that that the one? Yeah, I heard that one. That was a good one. Some good signals on that one. Oh, it's very good fun and very interesting. I'm not sure if you subscribe to the ARIS newsletter on the ARIS site, Amateur Radio International Space Station site. You can subscribe to a newsletter, and it gives you all the information regarding all the questions that are going to be asked. You probably know it already, a lot of you, but for those who don't, you can get insight to the questions that are going to be asked from the various schools and when the transmissions are taking place. And you just send your email, subscribe, and you also get information regarding any of the SSTV transmissions and calendar events and stuff. So that's worth doing, especially if it's a school which is speaking a language which you're not so concurrent with. It's all in English, so you know what they're talking about. So it's pretty useful. And obviously they stream it live on YouTube as well.
Oh, you've probably heard of them. I'm not sure if anyone else has heard of them. The M0YKS satellites that the Russians have, which is really high inclination, egg-shaped orbits, because they have a problem getting the what do you call it, the geostationary satellites, because the latitudes are so high, and obviously the geosynchronous is around the equator. They have these egg-shaped orbits where they go like in the south. They'll dip right close to the Earth and then go right up and go thousands of kilometers out, and then hold very slowly in the air and then come back down. It's really for TV and stuff like that. But I'm just wondering if there's any amateur radio stuff that's done through these.
Not that I'm aware of, but it's a pretty interesting concept, and I was visualizing it as you were describing it. So yeah, I can't say I've really come across anything quite like that. Just the different varying, obviously, heights of the different birds. Mainly the SSB ones are out there, but I have come across some pretty good FM ones in the past. I think HO68, if I'm thinking correctly, that had a big footprint. That was a very high altitude. So I have worked across the pond and great distances on FM using FM satellites. It's just some of the ones that we've got at the minute, and including the ISS, like you said already, they're not so high, only a couple of 100 miles. So yeah, that's interesting. It would be good to maybe have a go at that, and also the EME as well. That's another satellite in itself, isn't it? The moon.
Well, literally.
The output power required to get a signal back on that one probably would not be so great for the neighbours' health, I wouldn't have thought. So we'll probably have to give that one a miss.
Well, with JT, the JT software, it doesn't it's not that much actually.
Yeah, I think, well, I think to get a decent output from what I've seen, some of the antenna arrays which they're using in Europe, some fantastic setups. But probably they might hear you with those. But, even though I might look to have a fairly good antenna, it's not really much compared to some of those, I'm afraid. But I'm not complaining. But yeah, it's been a real pleasure meeting you all, guys. And you all seem top blokes, and looks like a great club. I hope that I can work you from the club sometime via the satellites, and that'll be something to look forward to.
Yeah,
So, yeah, that's
yeah. The one satellite that we use at the club is when the weather's fine, Simon, QO100. What we do is we have it in the car park, and we have to aim it above the building. There's one particular spot in the car park we get it in, and we aim it above the building there. The worst part of it is getting the antenna aligned with it, because we're only using a 62-centimetre dish, not a big one. So it is a bit critical getting that line. Once it's lined up, no problem. It's great, it is. And we have had quite a few contacts with it. What we normally do is we have set all the main gear up in the back of a car, on the car park, and then run coax into the building and have the radio in the building. So if it starts raining, at least nobody's going to get wet.
That sounds
that
good.
way.
Well, it's a proper amateur radio station from the sounds of it. Sounds good. Well, yeah, I
Yeah.
like the sound of that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, all the QO100 kit all runs off a 12-watt battery.
Excellent.
So it's great that way. I mean, it's fair. It is a great portable kit, and I think a lot of people who are using it are primarily using it portable as opposed to static.
Yep.
What about-
It's amazing, isn't it? You know,
Yeah.
having that opportunity. It's great. That's something I'm looking forward to trying out sometime. I've not got round to that yet, mainly because of the radio frequency. I've not got into the 1 gig stuff and above. But that's something for me to have a look at. So I'm looking forward to experimenting myself. You can never get too much.
We have got a video on YouTube of it, of the setup, and I think it was one of the guys from TX Factor that I think M0YKS contacted when we had it up, and I had a chat with him about it as well. We do have one member, G0YSP, Carsten. He's actually built all his own, put all the individual bits together, and I said, "What a flipping maze putting those bits together." Well, it's a challenge, but I mean, he's got a fixed station at home with a bigger dish, and he's working quite a bit down there. And like he said, the great advantage of being having it at home, you don't have to keep realigning the dish to get the signal.
Yeah.
Not unless you get something climbing up it, or
Yeah.
the pigeon sat on the top.
Yeah.
But yeah, he works quite a bit with it. But the satellite, I mean, I've not done satellite myself, but from what I've seen with the guys with the antennas in the car park there, and particularly Farid out in the field there with his antennas, so you need a warning: beware antenna, a mobile antenna around, waving it around. But it's great. It's great fun. I think it's an achievement as well, isn't it?
Oh, definitely.
It's a great achievement when you're aiming like you say, aiming it at somewhere in the sky there.
The satisfaction factor.
Pick up that signal.
Yeah.
Totally different to being just calling CQ and waiting for someone to come back to you.
Yeah, the
There's
thing
a
is,
lot more.
everybody does come back to you. That's the beauty of it. There's none of that,
Yeah.
is there? The passes are that short. You can't be miserable. You've got to make the most of it. So you put one CQ call out, and every pass is a pile up. So that is the fantastic fun of it. And like you said, the achievement is awesome. The thrill of it is awesome. But the fact that you can do it with a handheld and something in your hand, and you can do that distance on the cheap compared to a HF station, it's amazing. It's a fantastic part of the hobby, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, fellas, and it's been a real pleasure meeting you all, and I really am looking forward to speaking to some of you via the satellites, and obviously on the HF bands as well. So have a lovely remainder of your evening. Looks like a great club. If I'm down Stockport, I'll definitely pay you a visit. We're not a million miles away. And it's a real pleasure to meet you all. Thanks for inviting me tonight.
Thanks so much, Simon. Farry's like a wanderer to us. He pops up everywhere. He pops up everywhere with his satellite kit. He does. I'm not just his satellite kit, doing HF as well. He loves it. We love following him as well. Yeah,
Well, he's a top guy. I speak to him on nearly every night. practically. He's on there all the time. So
Yeah, he
likewise, I can't fault him. He's a top bloke, really. Nice
Yeah.
to see him anyway.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much,
Simon.
guys.
Thanks very much indeed. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Simon.
Stay well, and we'll catch you further on down the bands.
Thank you very
See you now.
much.
Bye
Good
now.
luck.
Bye.
Good luck. Enjoy satellites. Bye bye.
Yeah.